بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. احنا الجلسه دلوقتي ليها عنوان مهم قوي الحقيقه عن salt content in food and dietary management in hypertension. الجلسه اختيرت لاهميه ودور الملح الطعام او الصوديوم في ارتفاع ضغط الدم، واللي بيمثل cornerstone in the prevention of high blood pressure. بشرف بوجودي مع زمايلي واساتذتي، وهدعو استاذ الدكتور بدر المصطفى من السعوديه. والحقيقه الدكتور بدر بيشرفنا للمره الثانيه على التوالي في مؤتمرنا لجمعيه ضغط الدم المصريه، وانا حرصت ان هو يشارك معانا في دور الملح، لان دكتور بدر له اكسبيرينس رائعه في البريفنتيف measurements and programs in Saudi, and he has achieved great results. كان له مطبوعات جابها لنا المره اللي فاتت، المره دي الحقيقه ما ادناش حاجه جديده، لكن المطبوعات بتاعته كانت اساس في ان احنا نطور المطبوعات الخاصه بالوقايه من مرض ضغط الدم. كمان بحب اشكر الدكتور هاني نعمة الله اللي بيعتذر عن تواجده معانا النهارده لظروف طارئه. دكتور هاني نعمة الله اضاف للجمعيه ودورها في البريفنشن بروجرام اوف هاي بلاد بريشر انه قدم ورقه عمل في مجلس الشيوخ في لجنه الصحه والتغذيه بتوصيات الجمعيه للاقلال من استعمال الملح في الاغذيه المصنعه. والحقيقه في جلسته الثالثه لهذا العام تقدم بهذا المشروع اللي جاري دراسته وازاي نقدر ننفذه، وبيعتذر عن الحضور، ولكن دكتور محمد عبد الغني هيقدم لنا ريزومي عن هيز برزنتيشن. هترك الميكروفون استاذ الدكتور
بدر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بشكر الاستاذ الدكتور محمد عبد الغني على الدعوه الشريفه وعلى الدعوه الكريمه، ويشرفني طبعا اكون موجود بين اساتذتي وزملائي الاعزاء الاستاذ الدكتور ايمن بيه صالح نائب رئيس جامعه شمس، الاستاذ الدكتوره وفاء العروس استاذ القلب جامعه القاهره، والدكتوره حنان كمال. شرف لي ان انا اقدم من البلد الحبيب الى قلوب المصريين جميعا انا السعوديه العربيه الاخ العزيز الدكتور بدر، وهنسمع محاضرته ان شاء الله تكون محاضره قيمه على الهايبرتنشن اند دايت ميثودز اند فاكتس.
شكرا جزيلا. شكرا دكتوره وفاء، كذلك دكتور محمد شكرا جزيلا. You made me a hard task to give me 10 minutes for this topic. I tried really to condense it. I hope that I could succeed. Talking about diet is very important, not only because of the guidelines that recommends to go for correction of the diet, but as well, this is a fact that most of our lives are dealing with diet. So there must be a step for the diet, whether to improve it, to correct it, to add it, to delete it, whatsoever. Let's go ahead and see whether this diet is a really helpful issue and how far and which one is more helpful than the others. And in my talk, I'll try really to go through which elements are having more evidence, and if there's any role of causing increase in the blood pressure or in alleviating and decreasing the existent high blood pressure. Due to the time constraint, I tried really to make my talk as conclusions all over, because it will cover a very wide really elements of foods. In this study, for example, this is done this year in Saudi Arabia. Have they gone how far our hypertensives are behaving? And they are telling that almost 1/3 of them are currently using some remedies, dietary or non-dietary remedies, to treat their high blood pressure. And almost half of them have used that. Most of them was about garlic or karkadey and celery, karfas, These are the most herbals used. However, almost 1/3 of those patients involved use cupping, which is hijama. This is very common in my country, for example. The source of information, for example, for using these issues almost nil by physician. It is mainly from the social media or friends and colleagues. This means we are in the dark room. We are in no action as physicians, totally in this issue. This raises a bell. What are we doing so? We are not talking about that. We are not advising about that. We are not guiding our patients towards that. This is a very important issue. We have to address it. Worldwide, in the different publications, that it has been shown that in the general population, almost 80% of the worldwide populations have used ever something home remedies to treat whatever a problem that they are having. So this is an issue we need to know. We need to know it by heart. We need to practice it. But before that, we need to know it. I'm just going through the coming few minutes to address how salt is affecting. I thought that somebody will make my task easier by having a talk about salt, but seems that I need to cover it briefly. What are the effects of different dietary regimens? What are the available ones? We heard, for example, once we are going through an air flight, what are the diet that you would like to go? Vegetarian, lacto-ovarians, fish, whatsoever. How far these are really different than the others. And whether the diet components, carbs, fats, are really affecting blood pressure. Many herbs are there, which one are having more evidence. And then the supplements, أكيد في الصيدليات لما نمشي, we will see, oh, this is whatsoever garlic pills, this is زيت السمك, and whatsoever forth. And let's cover them very briefly. There are some other issues that behavioral therapy is another issue. I mean, how do I behave with my diet? لأن لما نقول لي واحد يقطع السكر ولا يقطع الملح, this is not only is just cutting سكر أو ملح. No, this is changing behavior. So I need to approach it by behavior therapy approaches rather than by just giving a prescription, just cut this or that. This needs behavioral techniques. And the other issue, we cannot talk about diet without having an issue about weight reduction, which plays a role as well in blood pressure changes, and as well fasting. So these are other issues which has to be put in mind. Let's start with sodium. In all my talk, it will be based on meta-analysis, none of them almost just based on sporadic reports, unless I do mention that. So in conclusion, salt, we have a very good evidence that increasing sodium intake, salt-based salt, is increasing the risk of developing high blood pressure, of developing morbidity and mortality related to cardiovascular diseases. This is full stop. This has been having a good data about that. Not this, but reducing the content of the sodium salt reduces this morbidity and mortality, and as well the risk for blood pressure, and as well decreasing and controlling blood pressure. By many means, there is no time to go for that. By many means, this is incorporated. So if there is one thing I need to advise my patient with, which is related to diet, it must be reducing salt. No matter how far I'm going to reduce, the matter is your current one, just reduce it. Your current practice of salt intake, reduce it to 3/4. شوية شوية, reduce it to half. There is no possibility to go to 0 or to go to 1/4, just one by one. And let's warn our patients about the hidden salt. There are many hidden salt in the canned foods, in the canned and the meat, processed meats, in the fast foods, in the pizza, and so on, so on, so forth. We need to advise and counsel our patients about the hidden salt, where is it? And afford a substitute. We cannot really give a patient just don't do without giving a substitute. And alternatives, there are many alternatives which are having the reverse potassium content, like herbs, نعناع, ريحان, يبشره, يخليه في الملاحة, يغيروا العادات حقهم ببساطة. This is an alternative. We can do it. This is a recent work done and just published last month, which have shown how far the findings related of that decrement of salt has proven to have a reduction, a direct reduction in the arteriosclerosis, regardless of having lowered the blood pressure or not. This is a Swedish large data, a Swedish study which has just published. For the sake of time, what are the diet regimens apart from salt? We are having different diet regimens. We are having one of the very well-studied DASH regimen is the DASH study, the DASH regimen. What is DASH regimen? For all of you which doesn't know the DASH regimen, the DASH is based on increasing the content of the vegetables and food, low dairy food, and to an extent, low salt food. This is the DASH in brief. And this have shown that it reduced significantly both systolic and diastolic blood pressure in just 2 weeks following this regimen. And the redirection is not only in the hypertensive, but as well in the normotensive. If we add a low sodium part of it, we decreased as well the sodium in the DASH, we will have even further decrement of the both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. What other regimens we do have? We are having the vegan diet, we are having the lacto-ovo vegetarians, we are having the Mediterranean, we are having the plant-based, and we are having the high fiber diet. I am putting them in order of evidence and effect. The higher one is having more evidence and more effect. The vegan diet is having more evidence and more effect in decreasing the risk for developing high blood pressure. Then it is followed by the lacto-ovo vegetarian. However, for the Mediterranean and the plant-based, it is having just modest effect and more likely to be for preventing blood pressure rather than decreasing high blood pressure in hypertensive patients. So in conclusion of that, if we are going to advise our patients, then we will go for DASH, low sodium DASH, lacto-ovo vegetarians. For the diet components, carbs, including flour, طحين بأنواعه، وهذا مشهور جدا في بلدنا سواء في السعودية ولا في مصر. العيش أكلنا سواء كان العيش رغيف ولا كان العيش رز. Okay, yes, this is a recipe which is very common. We are having sweets all over and sugary, full of sugar, and we are having high fat contents. I will not cover that because of time, but I'll just touch on issues about the meat. We are having good data that more animal flesh meat, the more risk to develop high blood pressure. And the more red meat rather than the white meat is the more risk as well for developing hypertension. And regarding the poultry, whether it is poultry or fish, if they are processed one or canned ones, it will be almost the same as red meat, but it might be worse than the fresh red meat. So we need to avoid the processed canned poultry or fish or meat. If not, we are providing a fresh meats. Regarding the diet components, still we are having cocoa, we are having tea, coffee, and we are having alcohols and caffeine beverages. All these are part of the daily intakes. What are the evidence for that? For the cocoa to start with, the cocoa, for you to know, we are having cocoa which are produced in some areas which is containing high flavanols, while some of the others having lower flavanols. And these are different in their contents. Those who are having higher flavanols having more chance to decrease both systolic and diastolic blood pressure in both hypertensive and normotensive. Regarding the tea, عندنا tea, 3 types of tea. We are having the fermented tea اللي هو الشاي الأحمر ولا الأسود. We are having the semi-fermented, which is اللي نسميه oolonga ولا oolonga tea. وعندنا الجرين تي which is unfermented tea. وهذا له أيضا سكيل كبير عريض. However, what had been studied, all these 3 types, the one which has shown that in the data that there is some evidence of decreasing or lowering blood pressure is the unfermented, but the evidence is in decreasing it in the normotensive. There is low data that approves that green tea is decreasing blood pressure in hypertensive patients. For the oolonga, for the red tea, there are contradictory data results. The coffee, many they are telling the coffee will raise my blood pressure. It is just a momentary ones. The modest intake of coffee wouldn't really affect or increase blood pressure. Rather, there are some reports, though not that of good quality, that it might be beneficial for the cardiovascular health in total, provided that the patient didn't develop any arrhythmias or so because of that. The alcohol, you have definitely heard about that any use of alcohol having a bad health. For high blood pressure per se, there is significant data that are showing that it is increasing blood pressure, whether systolic or diastolic, whether in hypertensive or in normotensive. And this is more pronounced in Black populations. For the beverages, this is the most worst that you may ever have it in our regimen, in our daily intake. They will significantly increase the systolic blood pressure mainly, but will increase both of them. And this effect, we are having data that it is more pronounced in the youngs. And it is more pronounced in the young acutely. They will having within 15 to 20 minutes or 30 minutes, an abrupt increase in their blood pressure. And that's why they are feeling, yes, it is our beverages because it's increasing everything in them. We have to put that in mind. معذرة. For herbs, أنا أفردت الهيربس لمجموعتين. الهيربس اللي احنا نستخدمها في بلادنا العربية وهيربس ما نستخدمها. اللي نستخدمها طبعا أكثر الداتا it is used by the Ayurvedic medicine in India, China, in the eastern regions, Malaya, Iran, Persia, and so on forth. Garlic, it might be the most studied, the natural garlic. And we are having data, good data, about reducing systolic blood pressure in hypertensive patients. Rosella, which is the carcade, oh yes, it decreases blood pressure, but mainly systolic blood pressure rather than the diastolic ones. And in a celery, الكرفس. Fresh juice of it, the studies have shown that the fresh juice of celery, celery معصور, كرفس معصور, fresh ones, سواء بعض الدراسات أضافت عليه عسل أو أضافت عليه vinegars, both of them, after regular use daily with a cup, almost cube واحد أو نصف كوب, the studies reduce both systolic and diastolic blood pressure, and these are consistent data. عندنا the olive leaves, عندنا مشهور في المملكة حتى لها يعني أزايز جاهزة زيت أو موية أوراق الزيتون. We are having good studies that have shown significant decrease. By significant, we means that there is significant difference statistical wise, and that the difference something around 5 plus or minus, but most of the herbs are less than 10 millimeter of mercury, none of them, apart from salt to an extent, after 1 to 3 months of regular use. The licorice أنا أظني عرق سوس هنا في مصر مشهور، في الشام عندنا في السعودية مش موجود تقريبا, and it's proven to have increase in blood pressure definitely. أنا آسف إذا أطلت عليكم. That's okay. There are many, almost tens, أكثر من 50 herb studied in the literature, and many of them having some proven side effects or proven positive effect on blood pressure. ما حمشي فيهم لأن أكثرهم ذولي غير متواجدين عندنا في يعني في أماكننا. And we have to put, however, in mind. If it has been the chance to go to cover them, will be found in other sessions in the futures. Supplements. عندنا supplements في الصيدليات في الإجزخانات. إيش هي السبلمنتس؟ عندنا calcium. Calcium has been studied. However, there is uncertain data. Though we are having some data about modest decrease, about 2 to 4 millimeter of mercury in systolic blood pressures after regular use of about 600 to 1,000 milligrams per day. Magnesium on the reverse having better effect. Whether this effect is towards decreasing blood pressure is direct to the blood pressure or due to the muscle relaxant effect of magnesiums, there are many talks about it, but magnesium content intakes or supplements may decrease both systolic and diastolic blood pressure after regular use for a few months. Fish oil, زيت السمك ويتباع كتير. Okay, high dose of it, high dose, not the low dose, have shown high dose معناها حوالي جرامين باليوم. وإذا استمرينا عليه مدة حوالي شهرين الدراسات اللي درست, yes, it will have some modest about 3 to 4 or 3 to 5 millimeter of mercury reduction in both normotensive and hypertensive. The garlic pills have shown to be superior to placebo. However, the data are not consistent in different trade or commercially available garlic pills. The consistency is more towards the natural garlic, but not towards the commercially available pills. So this has to be put in mind. I guess I'm coming short to the end. We are having folates. The folates with a high dose, which is about 5 milligrams per day, may have some modest decrease in blood pressure. The flavonoids I covered it a little bit in the cocoa, but is having favorable effect as well. We are having amino acids, and some are claiming that essential amino acid may decrease blood pressure. They are not consistent all. The L-arginine supplements are almost doing nothing, but the L-citrulines may have a modest decrement in the both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. To conclude, diet, it seems more likely to have an important role, and we need to know it as physicians, as practitioners, as care providers, and to study it and to know which to use and which not to use, and which are having an impact on our patients or not. Amongst all, salt will be the number one to stress on, and those recipes that contain a hidden sodium like canned foods and fast foods. To control blood pressure, apart from the low salt diet, we will go for the DASH. For those who are having higher vegetables or like the vegetarians, and to have less red meat as possible, and almost nil canned meats. There are evidence to support the low alcohol sugar, and as we'll find, carbohydrates intake, which I haven't covered in details in my talk for the sake of time. For the herbs, the most accumulated which are relevant to our society would be the natural garlic, Rosella carcadei, celery, and olive leaves, and most of them are okay to be used modestly. For the supplements, we are having the least evidence, fortunately, and they are showing the least predictable effect. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bader, for this elegant presentation. My question to you, do you have any data about the prevalence of salt sensitivity among the hypertensive population, and if there is a predictor for such individuals?
There are many studies which have gone through that, and this is a very old question which we keep to answer it. And many works have been done even in our countries, in the Middle East. In my country, at least, a good work has been done to study the sodium content and the salt content, whether in our diets or in our normal and hypertensive patients. And we are having a variable salt or sodium sensitivity, which we have to consider it. Those who are having more dark skin, they are more sensitive to salt, and these we are having to have more guidance and counseling with them to cut off salt.
Thank you, Dr. Bader, for this very informative and interesting lecture. بس ممكن اسال حضرتك بس احنا هل ننصح العيانين بتوعنا ان احنا بتناول بقى كميه سواء التوم سواء الكركديه، الناس كلها بتسال في القصه دي، فهل احنا بنريكومند للبيشنتس dietary intake of high content of these materials يعني every day، ولا كل قد ايه وكميتها قد ايه وهتستفيد منها قد ايه؟ يعني الليتريتشرز ما بتقولش بالظبط.
المايك عندك يطلع صدى.
السؤال كان على هل هناك fixed dosages of the herbal usages to prevent or to lower blood pressure؟ كم كوبايه كركديه، كم فص ثوم، قد ايه كرفس؟
We are basing this either on the studies and what they have studied and in real, and our own experience with our patients, okay? And this is very issue. I'm having the interest for the last 30 years to study these in my patients. They are teaching us, actually, because they are telling, I'm using this, and I found that my sugar, my blood pressure get decreased. We gone through those which are herbs made in hawajin or shay. These are the, I would say, the more worst to trust. In many occasions, I found that there are some medications among these mixtures, whether metformin or antihypertensive. In these mixtures, we have to depend on the natural products. This is number one. Number two, we will depend on the studies, and I have mentioned in my talks, for example, those who are going for Karkadeh, they used, for example, 3 to 4 times a week, and they've used almost half cup of around 1 full spoons. For those who are using the calcium, what is the dose? I've gone through that, but for the time constraint, it would be impossible really to cover this.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
شكرا جزيلا.